It's time for Supply Chain Now Radio, broadcasting live from the supply chain capital of the country, Atlanta, Georgia. Supply Chain Now Radio spotlights the best in all things supply chain. The people, the technologies, the best practices, and the critical issues of the day. And now, here are your hosts.
All right, good afternoon. Scott Luton with you here live on Supply Chain Now. Welcome back to the show. So we're broadcasting live today from MODEX, the largest supply chain trade show in the Western Hemisphere, being held right here in the hashtag Supply Chain City, Atlanta, GA. On today's show, we're speaking with a very innovative supply chain and really e-commerce entrepreneur. We're going to be discussing a wide variety of items, including the importance of securing that final mile. More about that in just a moment, but stay tuned as we look to increase your supply chain tech IQ. Quick programming note first, you can subscribe to what we do wherever you get your podcast from. We'd love to have you subscribe so you don't miss a single thing, including our new subscriber love campaign we're just about to kick off.
Be an insider.
That's right. Be an insider, even better. So on that note, perfect segue, let's welcome in my fearless, esteemed co-host here on today's show, Greg White, serial supply chain tech entrepreneur, trusted advisor, Atlanta City tennis champion. Need I say more, Greg?
You need not say more. Thank you. Thank you.
Where's the gold plate? You're supposed to bring the gold plate in.
You know what? I'm sorry. Maybe when we get back in studio, I'll do it.
Okay.
I'm afraid of losing it in a public environment because it's in very high demand.
Okay.
So,
you're scared of it get
I don't
our
want to
lamp
get
treatment.
pilfered.
Yeah, I got you. Okay.
I don't want it to get pilfered. But, hey, look, all of what we're doing aside, it's great to have Brad here.
Yes.
And talk about some of this cool last-mile technology. Right?
Yeah, you're going to enjoy this episode. We have Mr. Brad Ruffkess, founder and CEO of BoxLock, right here in our mobile studio on the show floor, Concourse C of this massive MODEX 2020. Brad, how you doing?
I'm doing great, guys. Scott, Greg, thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, it's our
You
pleasure.
bet. We've enjoyed our conversations leading up to the show. You and your team have had a ton of success. Some recent big announcements, and great to have you here so we can learn a lot more about BoxLock and give our audience the opportunity as well. So before we talk shop, let's get to the real stuff. Let's get to know Brad Ruffkess.
Yeah.
So tell us where you're from and give us an anecdote or two about your upbringing.
Let's see. Grew up pretty simple. Grew up in Tampa, Florida. I've been here in Atlanta for about 15 years. I've got brother, mom was a law firm administrator. Father was in licensed apparel for all of his career.
Licensed apparel.
Licensed sports apparel. So
I bet you have a boatload of football jerseys, don't you?
A lot of Buck stuff, I'm sure.
Dang.
I got I got a stack of helmets. It's interesting to look at what an NFL helmet looks like now versus what it did then. They're pretty simple.
Yeah, that's
before we started worrying about concussions.
Yeah, some of them
you
without
gotta
face
put that
masks.
on your website. All your licensed apparel.
So interesting background, interesting and ever evolving, which we can relate to here in the supply chain arena, right? So let's shift gears now that we know you're from Tampa. We know you're a big soccer fan as well, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Founding member of Atlanta United.
Okay, the world
All
champion,
right.
or was that 2 years ago? Or was it last year they won it all?
2018.
Yeah, 2 years
Okay.
ago. Last year conference.
And we're getting over a big injury this year, right?
Joseph Martinez,
Yeah.
ACL tear.
But we've got 6 points. We've got 2 wins. We're looking okay. We'll see.
Okay.
We'll see how it goes.
You're gonna have to train me on soccer. I'm still I'm slow. I'm
Did you
piecing
play?
the game together.
I didn't play.
But a big fan.
A big fan. I actually spent 2014 living in Rio and got to go to 10 World Cup matches in 30
Brad,
days. So.
wow, man, that is most people don't get to experience that, much less in Rio.
Yep.
One of the coolest cities in the entire world.
What were you doing down there?
I was leading planning actually for the 2016 Olympics and to watch an event, a world event, similar world event in the same country, to be able to leverage those learnings, pretty invaluable.
So just 4 years ago, you were working in sports planning and marketing. I mean, I don't know what you call that space. I'm not even sure what to call that
I think
space.
sports planning and marketing.
Let's call it that.
Marketing planning.
Wow.
Oh, we had it first, Greg.
Yeah, there we go.
Well, but to your point, I mean, these are lifetime, these are bucket list things, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So you're going to have to write a book on your experiences. You were down there a full year?
Yeah, I spent most of 2014 there. Ironically, working on the Olympics and wasn't still in that role in 2016. Didn't get to go to the Olympics at all.
That figures, doesn't it?
All right, so we've got it. You're foreshadowing. It's exactly where we want to go. We want to get to the point where you kind of high level Reader's Digest version. What led to you becoming an entrepreneur and founding BoxLock?
Yeah, so I guess I always kind of considered myself an entrepreneur. The real young, like lending library, rock museum as a kid, programmed at a real young age. Had my first funded startup in the late 90s.
Okay.
Didn't necessarily work, led to marketing planning, spent 8 years at Coke. And in my last role at Coke, I was
Coca-Cola.
The Coca-Cola Company,
Yeah.
not the other Coke. I had in North America team that was focused on marketing futures, building out the capabilities the company was going to need for the next 3 to 5 years. A lot of that work was taking into account, as more and more people are buying online, what happens and how do you change that muscle memory. Same sort of time period, my wife and I are moving from a condo to a house, and as we're going through it, we're just sitting staring at front porches, and all I can see is packages sitting out there on the front door, and no idea what we were going to do.
Well,
wow.
And making the connection, we've all heard, whether it's the cliche now of porch piracy,
Yep.
to we've all seen the images of the larger cities like New York City, where folks are in these big buildings, the lobbies get swamped,
Yep.
right?
Street corners.
Street corners.
I've seen pictures of piles on street corners. Right?
Lots of tickets.
Yeah.
I forget the number. They're staggering the numbers that these carriers are spending in tickets,
Really?
fines each year. Yeah.
So
That's interesting.
So that's a perfect segue into what BoxLock does. So tell us more about the company kind of in a nutshell.
Yep.
And then there's some other questions we want to pose to you as well.
Cool. Yeah. So we do supply chain visibility and security solutions intended for that first and last mile. Part of that business is focused on single-family residential homes, right? Making sure you're getting your e-commerce shipments, your prescriptions, etc., getting them delivered at home, right? Working with consumers, carriers, and then retailers and shippers. And so that's the core, the part of the business. And the other part we're here at MODEX talking about is our enterprise solutions, basically taking the applications of those same technologies and looking at them for things like off-peak deliveries and off hours, optimizing the first mile, and then some sense around sort of forward warehousing, right? Being able to leverage our technology.
Edge distribution is what I call it. So many people are doing that sort of thing where there's these forward warehouses. I can see where that would be a really good opportunity for you all.
Yeah.
So.
All right, so I'm going to do something that's going to sound dumb, but I think a lot of folks have heard of the phrase final mile.
Oh,
A lot of folks may know what that means. But in a very small nutshell, when you talk about the first mile and the final mile, explain to our audience that's still piecing together supply chain exactly what you're referring to.
Yeah, so we look at final mile is where something gets to the end point where it's going to be delivered. Right, and that's final mile, and that's typically the most expensive part of the supply chain.
That's into your neighborhood, on your front porch, right? Wherever it gets delivered to your door, right?
Yep. And our real value proposition is that transition between the final mile and the final yard.
Okay.
Right. So when it's actually been received, right, between this was handed off and when it was received, and when you think about small parcel deliveries where there's a lot of sort of knock and drop. It's a total black hole, right? Something gets put down, you have no idea whether or not the end recipient actually received it.
And I got a great question on this I want to ask you. But first mile is just reverse of that. First mile is just getting it in that main carrier, right?
Yeah. So think pickups, right? Think of today you pay UPS and FedEx, USPS to come pick something up at your home, or you go drop something off at a UPS store, or FedEx store. Think lab logistics, right? Think those little white boxes that you see sitting outside of your doctor's office. It's the first mile. Those samples are being picked up, right? And they're making it from the doctor's office to the lab. So that's
sometimes.
First mile.
Hopefully
they are.
Because those are largely unsecured. I hate to open that, expose
Pandora's
that dirty
box.
little secret, but that's really important stuff, right? I mean, we had a doctor's office next to our corporate office at one point, and I was always concerned for them about that.
So lab logistics falls in one of those areas where we just got the inbound interest of people calling saying, hey, can we use your technology in this application?
Yeah.
The lab logistics space is fascinating. So 20 to 30% of the time, those boxes are empty when someone comes to pick them up on a fixed route.
Huh.
So totally wasted route, and it's unlocked, right? So you're looking at a HIPAA violation. It's not necessarily the blood that's there, or the tissue. It's the patient record that's sitting right next to it.
Yeah.
So I want to back up a smidge and then talk applications. Let's talk your technology first.
Yep.
So paint a picture of how BoxLock works.
So our core hardware technology is a smart padlock. There are 3 key components that make that padlock different.
And
this is it.
Okay.
Right. So
and if you're watching this on YouTube,
be careful. That thing's
no
heavy.
kidding.
It's
you
heavy.
see me about come out of my chair.
That is a substantial piece of hardware.
But it's got a barcode. So it's a combination of barcode scanner, connectivity, and padlock. And so it's connected to the internet with on the home applications, 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi. We announced on Monday at the show that in the fall we'll be shipping a cellular version of the lock.
Okay, big news.
Big news for us. But so what happens is in the residential application, someone sets it up on their home, connects it to the internet. It sets up their account with UPS My Choice, FedEx Delivery Manager, USPS Informed Delivery, puts it on a container outside the house, and the delivery driver walks up, pushes the button on the top of the lock, uses the barcode scanner in the lock to scan the tracking number that's already on the package.
So does that allow the lock to only open when the barcode is the thing I expect to receive?
Yeah, so we see barcodes as keys. Every parcel already has those barcodes on them. We'll go back, we'll check, is that package really for you?
Yeah.
And is it out for delivery? And so we'll hit the carrier systems for that.
So your customers will provide their own container, and then all they need is that lock on it, and then it's turnkey.
Yeah, and we make it really easy for people to be able to buy it with containers.
Yeah.
So we partner with a number of companies that make storage containers, and it's available online in bundles with the container from Amazon, Home Depot,
Nice.
Best Buy.
Okay.
Very cool.
How do we ensure that lock gets there safely? I kid. So I had.
That's the old chicken or the egg question.
That's
isn't
right.
it?
I'm just messing. Well, so just in the last couple of weeks, as we have purchased some expensive equipment from a provider, e-commerce wise, and they sent. I try at least to get everything in one box. I hate all this corrugated. I feel bad whenever I don't get it in recycling and stuff, so I try to limit it. In this case, they sent. It was a expensive camera. They sent the tripod separately, which was still an expensive tripod, and left that on my porch while they took the camera with them because I wasn't home to sign for it. So what did that create for me? Well, that created a trip to this carrier's facility on a Saturday, right? Because we had to have it. We ordered it just in time for the Monday event. And, versus if I'd had this sitting on my front porch, whether we're home or on the road or going to pick up the kids from school, whatever.
It's effectively signed for.
Yeah, whether it is a $5 item or if it's a $5,000 item. And our camera did not cost $5,000.
Better not have. I didn't approve that budget spend.
This is so from a consumer or small business standpoint, clearly this is an easy value prop. But you're doing as much business, I think, with consumers as you are to businesses, B2B, right?
Yeah, and there's two sides of it. On the residential side, we see that as being kind of a three-sided marketplace, right? You get your stuff delivered, you want it reliably when you expect it. That carrier, that story you just told, that redelivery, they don't want to happen. Right? They lose a lot of money in that redelivery. And then on the other side of that,
we don't want it to happen either, right?
You want
it. I mean, they lose a lot of goodwill.
That's right.
Also.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you go pick it up there.
That's right.
So, but then the shippers, right, who actually paid for that to get delivered, we're able to show our customers are more likely to order online, do so more often, and are up to 10 times more likely to spend over $500 a month. So if you know that camera equipment's going to be delivered reliably, you're going to be more likely to order it, and it may be an impulse buy.
Okay.
You're not kind of asking the question, am I going to be there? Oh, I'm not going to order, and then you change your mind, right? You forgot about it.
Well, and the way that we've also had some shows about how complex last mile shipment costs have gotten for shippers. A redelivery costs them extra money to do
Absolutely.
that. So you can avoid that cost in the supply chain as well. That's interesting.
You know, as we were doing our homework on BoxLock, I didn't really gather the top line of how you can drive revenue, because you're driving behaviors. You've got a sense of security around you're going to get what you order, right? You're not going to try to race home and knock 3 cars out of the way to make sure you're there and that expensive item or that drug or what have you doesn't sit on your porch longer than it has to. So crystal clear here. So I want to – are you good? I want to shift into a World Economic Forum story.
Can I ask one
Please,
other question about the enterprise application, and that is you had talked about the dynamics of pickup. I could see where this could communicate that they should or shouldn't stop by and open that LabQuest or whatever box. Can it make that communication back through?
Well, so
I know it communicates with your network, but
we would look at the other way around.
Okay.
So we'll integrate on the enterprise side. We'll integrate into route management solutions, and we'll actually fire the trip.
Oh, nice.
So
you don't. Oh, that's brilliant.
So a lot of these companies are on fixed routes where they're sending someone once, twice, 3 times a day.
Sure.
Now they're only able to send someone when a route's fired. There's actually something in there to go pick up.
Wow.
And they didn't have to do it by placing a call.
Yeah.
Right? They were just able to scan in an employee ID or a sample ID, and that triggered the route. And so
that's even more efficient than what I was thinking of. Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yep.
Wow.
So,
is anyone doing that with you today?
We're working on it with a couple of companies in that space.
That's what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Got it. That's awesome.
All right, so let's talk about the World Economic Forum, which has a great Twitter account, by the way, and some great content. And we're constantly looking for new content, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's supply chain or business related. So they came out evidently and recommended an integrated ecosystem approach to curb congestion and carbon impact in urban areas as a result of increases in last mile deliveries, kind of what we were just touching on a second ago. So, Brad, speak to that a bit. Why is that a problem? And what's y'all's role in addressing it?
So they came. I mean, they basically came out and said, "Look, you got 60% increase in e-commerce shipments on the B2C side, 30% increase, 33% increase in B2B e-commerce orders. Our cities are getting congested, and so they essentially said, "Hey, look, the ecosystem's got to work together, right? Everybody in this ecosystem needs to play. This is a problem we need to address." And so they made 4 recommendations as part of that integrated ecosystem. First one being EVs. Makes sense.
Yep.
The second one was off-hours, off-peak deliveries, right? So essentially we power that. Mm-hmm. Awesome. The third one was then dynamic routing solutions, which we just talked a little bit about on the lab side. And then the fourth one was multi-branded parcel lockers and boxes, right, which we power the tech for.
Wow.
And I think we've had a little experience with the convenience of that fourth item he's talking about. I think we had a trip into Austin and picked up a component at one of these automated but secured locations that was at a 7-Eleven, I think.
Yeah.
So you are involved in that space as well. And that was our first time using. We were at a show in Austin, and we I think we left a piece back at the house or back at the studio as we traveled cross country.
We ordered.
And we ordered in transit. And as we went and fueled up at the 7-Eleven in Austin, walk up. And
fueled up, is that what you call it? Because I got a 6-pack.
Still a little fuel, a little go-go juice.
Well,
right.
I mean,
That's right.
it was a long stay.
They say data fuels supply chain.
That's right.
It's actually alcohol that
it's
fuels
actually
supply chain.
cold beer.
I'm kidding, Mom.
Cold
I'm kidding.
beer.
But Brad, so it's really interesting. So this is just one application. Was this the initial product that really got the company going, and now you're kind of going in different directions, different applications, including these secure containers that we might find on our street corner or something.
Yeah, so we won't lockers. We won't do. That's a pretty robust space, but you get the value proposition on the multi-parcel box side of having a multi-carrier locker at your home.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Right.
Okay.
So that's and so
yeah, because even with the lockers, I mean, some of those lockers are brand specific. It's only this carrier or that marketplace that I go to for those lockers, right?
Yeah. Well,
and I have to go. That's the other.
Well, that's actually a crazy one. So you think about the savings to the carrier, right? Someone goes to a locker. Say they're taking 80 packages to a locker, right? Line haul run, drop it off 5 miles. Mm-hmm. 5 miles back, they dropped off 80 packages. you now have 80 people who need to go drive half a mile to go pick that up. So your net results 90 miles. You go do a delivery route to homes, and you're going 6 miles and then a tenth of a mile to 80 homes. It's going to be a fraction from the overall impact of what that looks like.
So that is where you get the carbon footprint. One aspect of the carbon footprint impact. The other is if I'm in New York City and I need to drop 80 packages at the floor of the, whatever, pick a building, right? I just drop them into a box, lock it up, and away I go. And everybody has their own code to the very same lock.
Their own code. I mean, what they're delivering is essentially the code, right? So you go think about. So in New York, they did this whole pilot program on off hours deliveries, and challenge was shipper benefits a lot. Shipper and carrier benefit a lot, right? 40% convenience gain. On the receiver side, you had to add someone in off hours to be able to receive it, and so they actually gave higher incentives to the receiver on that end. With our technology and our solution, you take the labor need out of the receiving end because they can receive it unattended.
Wow.
So we've kind of already walked through.
Well,
go ahead.
I just think that's a great segue into unattended, which was another recommendation that we've seen, considering the thing that we're all talking about at MODEX this week, and everybody is talking about at shows that they either are or aren't attending because of coronavirus, right? The need for no-touch or unattended delivery is another. I could see that being another driver towards this.
Social distancing.
Social distancing.
That may become a cliche.
As I sit right next to Brad.
Yeah, you're almost in his lap.
Yeah,
great.
Yeah.
So let's talk about it, because this is not something that's going to go away this afternoon, next week. It's going to be here for a while. So talk about the coronavirus effect and how that factors in all this.
Well, I think as you've seen over the last couple of weeks, there's a lot of companies that are focusing on how do they, more people stay at home, right? Especially high risk patients, particularly those that may have lower immune systems for various reasons.
Underlying health.
Yeah, they're just at higher risk, right? And so now you've got a delivery guy walking up to 80, 100 households, essentially with the potential to be a spread agent.
Yeah.
Right? And so
or a recipient.
Or a recipient, which then turns it around. So this idea that we can do this piece of social distancing, right, allow those deliveries to happen. A lot of them may be high-value medications where you're needing a signature, right? And to be able to deliver those without needing to put them in someone's hand, it ensures they get there. But it also, you're reducing a contact point, right? You're reducing a contact point, and everybody benefits from that. And so we think in some of those areas we can play a role in helping.
Yeah, let's eliminate as many contact points as we can, right? So that's what here at MODEX, everybody's altered their approach to doors and handshakes and just being, I think this is an important point because we were talking about this with Resilience 360, David Schillingford, who MHI flew in basically to talk about what they're seeing trends-wise. And, you just got to be smart. You're not feeding into the panic. You just want to be smart about an issue that's there. And that's inarguable, Yeah. Just be smart about it. And I love how this there's so many, as you kind of walked us through these different applications. I don't know about your brain, but my brain's thinking about 36 others where this would be relevant.
It's interesting because I'm curious about that question. I was having the exact same thought are there other scenarios that have been brought to you here at the show or elsewhere or that you have discovered from talking to people?
Yeah, I mean, we entered into the residential delivery solution business. And so what we started finding through some of the awareness we had on the consumer side was just this overwhelming high-quality inbound flow of really innovative supply chain leaders in different organizations who are saying, hey, I've got a very specific problem that I'm trying to find a solution to, and we think your technology can play a role in solving that. And those are all things we never would have been able to imagine. That lab logistics scenario,
right?
Some of the forward warehousing things we're doing where they're texting a QR code to someone in the field to be able to get access, and then scanning inventory out and billing out invoices, all using that device. Some of those things we wouldn't have been able to make up. We've got some companies in manufacturing quality control that are making sure they're using the work order and a QR code on the work order to make sure the wrong part doesn't get taken.
Yeah.
We never would have thought of those.
That's critical. I mean, think aerospace. So as an Air Force veteran, I'm still in love with the F-16 and of course the F-22. Not so much about the F-35, but I can't remember which aircraft it was. But they early upstream in supply chain, they did not get the right parts right. And it has something to do. We were talking with someone. It might have been in Arizona about some of the metals that could only be found in Ukraine. And the Ukraine conflict took place not too long ago, and so the metals, so the supplier compromised solutions that went into this aircraft, right, from a metal standpoint, and come to find out, a lot of the fleet gets grounded because of the I think it was turbine fans, because of some of the defects in the part. So while for different reasons, I think of other reasons why certain suppliers may look for shortcuts or, and think the items line up and they don't line up. So this kind of application here prevents, those downstream supply chain problems from happening, right?
Yeah. I mean,
Can I interject an
please.
entrepreneurial viewpoint? Because I see three things here.
Three things.
Excuse me. One, Occam's razor. The simplest solution is usually the best one, right? And what's more simple than something we all can relate to in terms of form factor? The other is that you are seeing and getting feedback from people that they're bringing additional applications to you, and the final one is that you are both receptive in recognizing that and leveraging that to prudently, it sounds like, extend your marketplace reach. When you've got those three things, that is an incredible recipe for entrepreneurial success. When companies are asking the question, I advise companies as well, right? So when companies are asking the question, could you also do this for us? You are really, really on to something. So that's really encouraging. This is an exciting, simple, and yet very exciting product.
Absolutely. So you mentioned toward the front end of our conversation here some of the things you're showing off here at MODEX.
Yep.
Tell us more about that again. And are you hitting this concourse here at C, or you in B or A? Where are you at?
We're C. So we're right back here. We're CC 6671.
Okay.
And we've announced two things, and we're showing off three things. So the two things we've announced.
Two and three.
Two and three.
It's like Chuck Woolery just about.
Yeah.
Two things we announced. One is a press-to-open functionality that allows remote operators to be able to open the lock without necessarily needing to scan something, leveraging the back end.
Okay.
Wow.
And then the other one is the cellular version, which we're started taking pre-orders for, and we'll ship in the fall. So those are the two announcements. And then on what we're showing off first mile, last mile, and then forward warehousing. And so we're doing that through a lab logistics on the first mile and pickup. Then we're doing an off-peak delivery solution, and then we've got a solution where you go text a phone number to get a QR code to take out parts.
So the off-peak delivery solution. Explain that more.
Yeah. So and one of the things that is we've been astounded by, but it's a reality, is how prevalent barcodes are just in supply chains. Right? They power supply chains in just about every way. And so you think about everything that gets delivered, it's got a tracking number on it, and
right.
it's got a barcode on it. And so we'll integrate in with whatever technology someone's using on the back end, whether it's their WMS or their route management solution. And so they'll be able to come do a delivery, scan what they're bringing, and our lock will check the back end with whatever requirements the client wants. It'll open. They confirm it was delivered. They can scan in individual inventory if they want, but then they can deliver it in an unattended way, right? And then you can use employee HR badges to retrieve it.
So can we put this on our pantry at home so that our kids only get the 3 snacks per day versus the 17 they ask us for? Is there an application there?
Right? It wouldn't be that hard to enable. I mean, truthfully, right? I mean, you could enable the controls for just about any sort of trigger with a tool like this, right? Yeah,
so we've got the APIs in the back end support two concepts. One is packages and one is barcodes, right? And so you could essentially print out a stack of barcodes and say they're all one-time use. Here, it's like kid goes, "Hey, I want a treat."
Yeah. Where's your ticket?
Here's your treat. Go scan it.
Love it. Oh boy, the mind's racing, Brad.
And then only one code works a day.
Right.
You literally could discipline your own self.
Right.
To if you're on a diet.
Yes.
I mean, yeah.
Well, infinite applications.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
really. Yeah. I mean, no wonder your team is growing left and right. So what I love what you shared before we came on is this report that y'all did in conjunction with Supply Chain Dive. We're already big fans of Supply Chain Dive. As I mentioned, we're always looking for great content, especially with no slant. Emma Cosgrove is just one of the jewels of supply chain.
Man,
she does great reporting.
Produces great content.
And it gets to the point. It's not why am I picking on 17?
And it's not an ad, today. Right? I mean, it's not an advertorial or whatever, right? It's real news. Yeah, that's great. They do a great job.
They sure do. So walk us through what this report shares here.
Yeah, so we worked with Supply Chain Dive's brand studio. Yeah, take copies. We worked with the brand studio over at Supply Chain Dive and really wanted to take and we're really trying to figure out how do we scale the quantity of that inbound and maintain the quality of what's coming in, and so we did that by working with them to help put out a piece that outlined how do they improve last mile. The last mile was secured, unattended delivery and asset transfer solutions, really intended to further sort of the inspiring supply chain professionals to think about the ways that they could be using secured asset transfers within their organization.
Well, here's the so what. We talked about that just on about every episode. 1.7 million packages are lost or stolen every day.
Every single day.
Every day. That is unbelievable. What more reason do you need? All right. So you talked about what we're doing here at MODEX. Do we want to touch on, and don't want to put you on the spot, y'all have had some big wins from what's going to fuel the growth. Can you release any of that? Or?
Yeah, sure. We just we've been fortunate in our story, right? I mentioned I didn't come from a supply chain background, and we've been very fortunate through advisors and investors to have just an amazing group of individuals and companies who have become part of what we're doing.
Yep.
And so we just announced a $4.5 million fundraising round led by a number of former DHL executives. Dan McHugh taking the chairman role. Dan ran Southern Air, ran Livingston, ran DHL in Asia. Former chief operating officer and CFO at Pitney Bowes, Mike Moynihan's part of that. And then on the tech side, we've got Robert Williams joined the board. Robert was at Microsoft and then Amazon and helped them build the Amazon App Store, Amazon Fire Store.
Wow, very cool.
It's quite
How
a SWAT
did you
team.
land those kind of investors?
I got introduced by a cousin to Hans Hickler. Hans ran DHL in the U.S. Hans became an advisor and then an investor, and so a lot of those connections have come through sort of proliferating through that
6 degrees
that
of
network.
celebration. 6 degrees of celebration.
All right,
That sounds cold, doesn't it?
Well, congrats.
Thank you.
This is such a common sense. I love common sense models and common sense solutions. I mean, it makes even more sense when you bring the light. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. So let's ask you one final question before we make sure folks know where they can go to get more information. When you look at the ever-evolving world of end-to-end supply chain, right now there's a story a minute. What's one thing or topic or issue or trend or challenge? What's one thing that's got your attention more than others right now?
I think this World Economic Forum report and what's happening in urban last mile logistics, it's impacting every one of us every day, and it's as we're at COVID-19, we're getting more and more delivered, right? We're going less to stores. And so this is going to reach a tipping point, and there's some things that have got to change, and I think we want to play a role in that solution. We think we can help, and we think there's a benefit to everybody in it. And so I think that's the stuff that gets us really excited.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's interesting because when that came around, the reports of those issues came around, and it was really just last fall that we really started to hear about it. I don't live in a city center, so I can't relate. I have a porch that has it's able to kind of block the view from the
deers
street.
as your neighbors.
I've
seen
deer,
you on social media.
Yeah, that's right. I have deer as neighbors. I have part of my porch can block the view from the street, so nobody knows that I've got anything on my porch. I mean, I am, I guess, probably the ultimate exception to the rule, and I had not thought about the exposures or the complications that other people in society face because of that. So
Malcolm just reminded me that the plural of deer is deer. So
it is deer. Okay, that's good.
Hey, so all right, where
we named one of them Deer, so it's Deer's children.
They get along with Miss Kitters.
Miss Kitters, yes, yeah.
He's got a cat named Miss Kitters.
Miss Kitters.
Attacks.
He's got a second,
I did not name it. I just want to be clear on that point, people.
He's got another cat named Shenanigans Brad.
Miss Kitters and Shenanigans.
No, that's
all right.
That's not true. I've got a dog named Major. Okay, so that counteracts the Miss Kitters thing.
All right. All right, so let's.
I cannot believe you just did that.
That's brilliant.
All right, so
taking up Brad's time. Like
that's
that.
right. That's right. Well, all right. So where can folks? Undoubtedly, they're gonna have that epiphany, that eureka moment like we've had.
Yeah.
Where can folks learn more, Brad?
Yeah, so they can come visit us on our website at getboxlock.com.
Yeah.
We've got the report there to be able to download, contact information, reach out. We'd love to help understand a little bit more about some of the challenges others are facing and see if there's ways that we can be able to help them make an impact in the first and final mile.
Love it.
Among other things, one of the coolest logos we've seen.
Agreed.
Right?
Yeah, you really, I mean, the whole act. Of course, I didn't realize before we sat down is that you already had an entrepreneur background. And the Rock Museum you talked about, I mean, really, in its earliest, that always fascinates me. You know, even though we've got the Scott Schwabes of the world that wait until later in their journey to become an entrepreneur. He retired from the Navy and then, after some corporate experience, then kicked off his first venture. But it seems like it's been in your genes since birth.
Since real young. And I think that my first startup that in the late 90s, you learn from your failures, right? Mm-hmm. All teachable moments. Some of them are timing, but some of them were my own and my own mistakes, and you learn from those, and they make you stronger. And so I think it's an important lesson overall.
Love that.
I think what's interesting is when we were in Austin, we talked a lot to people in supply chain who were not of supply chain. They weren't. That wasn't their original, or even.
That's true.
This even supply chain was their first foray, as we had talked to them, and I think
that was at the CIO summit. Yeah.
Yes, and I think that goes to the breadth and diversity of knowledge. That we're getting into supply chain that is helping us break through, right? So thank you and welcome to supply chain.
Thank you.
Absolutely. This is going to be who's the guy that came on the Shark Tank, and the doorbell when you rang the doorbell, there was a camera in it.
Ring
guy? Yeah. And now
he
is
Tank?
Yeah, believe it or not.
Now
it is
right?
huge. Yeah, this is. I mean, buckle your seatbelt.
Wow.
This is such a real application in the e-commerce era, and just from our recent examples. If I'd had this, it would have saved that family time on Saturday. So, good stuff. GetBoxLock.com. And Brad, I'm sure, are they keeping you busy on keynotes and panels and fireside chats yet?
Yeah, we're doing pretty well. We'll see how trade show season pans out.
Right.
Like let's. But we got a bunch of good stuff upcoming.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Really is. Really enjoy
Good things to come.
Brad Ruffkess, founder and CEO at BoxLock. Greg, what a great conversation. I kind of hate to cut it off. There's so much more going through my brain right now.
I know. You want to just spill every idea out there? Maybe we can tell him offline so we don't give somebody else the idea.
Okay.
Right?
That's true. Well, really enjoyed it with Brad. To our audience, stay tuned as we continue our coverage of MODEX 2020. So many great stories just like this here that are going places. Also, check out, on a separate note, some of our upcoming events, both virtual and in person. On the events webinar tabs, we've got upcoming events with EFT by Reuters Events, Automotive Industry Action Group, of course, the Georgia Logistics Summit, and Stand Up and Sound
Off, a virtual event brought to you by Supply Chain Now. So where we want to hear from you.
That's right. And Brad, you might appreciate this. So all the webinars out there, all the digital forums out there, typically it is one facilitator or one subject matter expert dominating one-way communication, right?
Yep.
That's how the world's worked. Well, with this Stand Up and Sound Off, we are putting that on its head. We're going to put out 2 topics. Greg and I are going to just be quiet and just ask the audience to share their perspective and their commentary and their experiences, and really be the SMEs, star of the show.
I guarantee you have at least 3 names in your head of people we're going to get input from.
Yes.
Right?
I love it.
Right?
All right.
I'm hoping that it's good, Jonathan Townsley. I'm talking to you.
The AMA radio of supply chain.
Yeah,
there you go.
That's right.
I love that.
That's right.
So big thanks to our guest here today, Brad Ruffkess with BoxLock. You can check them out at getboxlock.com. Be sure to check out our upcoming events, replays of our interviews, other resources at supplychainnowradio.com. Find us and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. On behalf of the entire team here, Scott Luton wishing you a wonderful week ahead, and we will see you next time on Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.